Welcome to today's conversation, which is going to be rich and challenging and wonderful. And environmentalism has long been guided by principles of ecological sustainability and notions of intergenerational justice for people and for planet. However, as recent events, including the explosion of Black Lives Matter protests and the crisis of the COVID-19 global pandemic have shown, various issues of intragenerational justice, such as racial justice and economic justice, often mediate the everyday life experiences, expectations, and outcomes for many people across race and class. Climate change is in many ways an assault on the young, the poor, women, BME communities, those least responsible for it, yes, yet abandoned to bear the brunt of its impacts. As a movement, the rise in BLM protests last summer provoked and helped those of us in transition and other community-led movements to really interrogate how our initiatives interact with pressing issues of social justice, demanding that we do an awful lot better. As a movement, the environmental movement in general and the transition movement too has not been doing well enough, and in part at least has been guilty of adopting a more passive approach to issues, matters around social justice. That's not to say people haven't been concerned about it and doing amazing work in many places on this, but rather we haven't been anywhere near proactive, outspoken, or explicit enough. We're still learning how we can best encourage and support transition groups to address these issues within every local initiative. I'm not saying this is easy. Our quest for intergenerational justice cannot be divorced from the urgent issues of intragenerational injustice that many people face. Hopefully there's a lot of deep reflection and learning underway, and this wonderful What Next Summit has hopefully and has been so far a reflection of that. I sense a deep, deep commitment to this work within this movement, within Transition Network, and within many of our partners in this summit. And I'd like to particularly thank our friend and colleague Nick for all that he's brought to this conversation. And on that note, as a co-founder of the transition movement, I'm so pleased to have Nick and Marvina here for what is going to be a fascinating conversation today. And I'm hoping to learn some truths. And in that respect, I'll be doing a lot of listening. And as a friend of mine once said, you have to go out on a limb because that's where the fruit is. And I'm really excited by where we are all about to go. So I'm going to introduce our guests today. So Marvina she explained to me how to something, I've written it down. Ese Ogene Newton is Nigerian-born community leader, activist, feminist, mother of two, founder and CEO of Angel of Youths, a charity that aims to lift up young people from disadvantaged backgrounds and to help challenge inequality. She inspires community development projects which are imaginative, inclusive, and productive. She champions the continuing heritage of achievement in the passions of young people from marginalized communities while promoting the potential of service providers across Leeds Metropolitan Regional District. Angel of Youths aims to bring forward positive change for young people in the UK, involving them in project design and management of programs sensitive to culture, past and present, advocating for recognition of their skills and talents. Inspired by her heritage, history, culture, and experience of excellent mentorship in her youth at Crown Prosecution Services, Marvina enjoys serving the community and mentoring young people to inspire change in their lives. A qualified Prince to project manager, Marvina was also the project director Nigerian Community Leeds, creating projects that advance education, promote racial harmony, and advance enterprise. She was also instrumental in leading the End SARS campaign in the UK and founded Nigerians United in Diaspora Foundation to support the strategic development of programs to improve Africa. She's co-opted trustee for children and young people at West North Leeds Community Committee. She's also a trustee and shadows the chair of Path Yorkshire, a positive action training organisation addressing underrepresentation of Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities under the auspices of Leeds City Council. As you will see, she radiates a passion to tackle key social political issues that affect young people, inspired by a love for turning ideas into reality via building young adults' careers around their passion while raising awareness on health and well-being in their local communities. She has a passion for decolonising organising education using her role in various boards as governor of Hollybush Primary School, student union president of Bradford College, and campaign executive officer of African Arising UK to inspire re-editing history. She was also a biomedical technician at NHS St James's Teaching Hospital and at the histopathology department. She's a trustee of Path Yorkshire. I think I mentioned that already. She's the founder of My Queer Culture, an organisation that puts BAME LGBT people at the front of the gay scene. In doing so, she organised the first BAME March of Leeds Pride in 2015. She's largely unpaid for her works, falls well beyond the 9-to-5 limit we all hope to stick to. Founder of BLM Leeds and United for Black Lives Movement, mentor and support the strategic development programme for creating an equitable society for all Black lives in the UK. Given such a packed CV, which is exhausting enough to read, never mind to actually do, is extraordinary, and the demands on your time, Marvina, we're so honoured that you could join us here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's essay organic. And you did such a good job trying to do it, but don't worry, we'll get everybody to say it by the end of the day.
Wonderful, excellent. And we're also joined by Nick Anim. Nick joined the Transition Bounce Forward team in October 2020 following his PhD at the Development Planning Unit at the University College London, which focused on Transition Town Brixton as the main research case study in trying to understand the perennial challenges of inclusion and diversity in local environmental movements. To help fund his research, he also worked as a postgraduate teaching assistant on the Development Administration and Planning Master's course. In that capacity, he helped organize and run field trips to Ethiopia and Uganda, where he worked with several community-based NGOs to help students develop critical approaches to development planning. In his research and work with Transition Town Brixton and the Transition Bounce Forward project, Nick has drawn on his lived experience to ensure that matters of durable inequalities, social justice, and more specifically, racial justice are always central to developing and supporting community sustainability and resilience initiatives. He's very much driven by questions about how to build solidarity across differences and has helped and advised numerous community-based organizations on their approach to community engagement. At UCL, he had a secondment at the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Department, which helped him to better understand issues of structural and institutionalized racism, particularly in the higher education sector. In 2020, Nick received a reward from UCL in recognition of his research and work to further the understanding of how social justice, global justice, and environmental sustainability intersect. Nick, welcome as well. Delightful to have you here.
Thank you so much. What a blessing. What a blessing. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for choosing to spend your Saturday afternoon with us. I'm particularly really grateful to our keynote listeners who you will meet later, Marcus and Hannah Ryder, who join us from Malaysia. And I'm really, really grateful. You know, they bring a lot of expertise to the conversation. Right. So before I get started again, thanks all for joining. But Rob, I want to say a special thank you to you because this really was the kind of challenge that I put forward to you. You know, as yes, we're transition movements. It's not a hierarchical movement. It is, you know, horizontally organized, and power is sort of decentralized, so to speak. But you are a de facto representative stroke leader of the movement, and so in many ways a lot of what the movement does sort of links to you in some way or the other. My challenge to you, and you know, to host this and to also be a listener and to engage in the conversation was not necessarily an easy one. Of course, I have, you know, put forward some critiques of the movement insofar as not engaging enough or not engaging proactively enough with issues of social justice. And that, you know, I recognize that that it's a difficult call for you to come into this conversation and, as it were, to be in the line of fire, possibly, I should say. Yeah. In that respect, I salute you, Rob, and I thank you for taking for deciding to accept that challenge, because it's only through challenging ourselves that, of course, we can change things. And there is no greater challenge than the issues we face now. Okay, so we're done. I'm going to speak for just a little bit, and then I'll pass to Marvina, who speaks for a little bit, and we'll have some interaction thereafter. So if you bear with me, I'm going to share my screen. we go. Okay. So, oops. The question of whether environmental sustainability has a problem with social justice is at first glance what we might say an abstract kind of question. Yes, and it is kind of abstract because we are dealing with two contested concepts here: environmental sustainability and social justice. However, it is a question that in many ways reflects the state of the union in terms of how humanity is organized on Earth. And that is to say that we are in the middle of two simultaneous emergencies. On the one hand, we face the twin climate and ecological breakdown, and on the other hand, we have an emergency of persistent inequalities within countries and between countries. Taken together, it becomes clear that humanity is facing something of an identity crisis. And it is a crisis really of belonging and othering. So it's belonging, our relationships with each other, and of course our relationships with the planet as well. So those two crises are not separate from each other. Rather, they are produced, reproduced, and maintained by the dominant system of governance we have in the world today, which is driven by systematic and, in fact, in some cases, systemic oppression linked to expropriation, exploitation, and extractivism. So the question of whether environmental sustainability has a problem with social justice really was triggered by my research when I started doing before I started doing my research, and I came across this book, which I think Hannah Wright will be very interested in. It's about how can we make sustainability just in order to produce a more equal world. And in the book, I came across this one of the chapters by Andrew Dobson. Provoked me, it kind of piqued my interest, my inquiry. And Dobson argued that I've come to the reluctant conclusion that social justice and environmental sustainability are not always compatible objectives. Assertions to the contrary are more often, I think, based on wishful thinking rather than on clear-sighted analysis or hard empirical evidence. Dobson is not the only social scientist to have come up with this conclusion. A few others have, and here I list a few of them who have also put forward that contention. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the basic argument is that environmental sustainability, well, apart from the fact that it's a necessity for all life on Earth, if we move past that understanding, then environmental sustainability has a greater focus on intergenerational justice, as Rob said during the introduction. So both environmental sustainability and social justice share a kind of common organizing concern, which is about scarcity. So with environmental sustainability, it's about scarcity of resources and so on and so forth. With social justice, it's about scarcity in terms of the distribution of justice within and between societies. Some of you might think, well, environmental sustainability and social justice come together with the environmental justice movement. Well, if we look at the environmental justice movement with its origins, what the movement was asking for was for waste disposal facilities and also factories that were emitting pollutants into the air. They should be distributed sort of evenly across different communities in the United States, and they shouldn't be concentrated on one side, because in one particular part, which is the part that's racially marginalized groups tended to live. The argument there was, well, it was really based on NIMBYism, so it's not in my backyardism. And what was happening was people, the wealthy communities were able to fight against the local authorities in terms of the placement of those facilities. And of course, we see that on a global level as well. What we find is waste, plastics and so on and so forth from, for example, the UK and other Western countries generally tend to be packaged and shipped off to so-called developing countries or least developed countries. places in Africa, in Ghana, there's a place called Abobloshi, where you'll find kids of up to about 8 years old burning plastic or burning computers just to get the raw materials which probably could have been mined from those countries in the first place. Recently, Malaysia and China, I believe, also stopped the exportation of plastics to those countries from the UK and other Western countries. So what we find is, the production of goods, sort of all the profits concentrated in the developed countries, and all the entropy, the waste material exported to developing countries. So this happens within countries and also, of course, outside countries. So the environmental justice movement was saying, no, have an even spread of these facilities. What they were not arguing about is for companies to stop producing those waste materials. So to frame the problem, we are destroying the earth, but of course, under our system of capitalism, it turns out that exploiting and extractivism are quite profitable for a few people. So we shall carry on exploiting the earth, under the system as we know it. One of the things that drew me to the transition movements, to do my research, and this, pretty much every talk you hear me give, I will put forward this quote. And if we wait for governments, it will be too little, too late. If we act as individuals, it will be too little. But if we act as community, it might just be enough, just in time. Yeah, we might be able to solve the problems if we act as networked communities within, across the world. Really, if we can do that, then we can disrupt the status quo as it is. But then the question, of course, becomes we who? Who are we talking about when we talk about we? And this is where I tease out a bit of the problem between environmental sustainability and social justice, or environmentalism as a movement and social justice movements. Environmentalism argues that we have, crossed certain planetary boundaries, and we need to sort of try to roll back and work within those planetary boundaries. And the list of them are there for you to see. In terms of climate change, I think right now we're riding at, greenhouse gases, we're riding at about 415 parts per million in the atmosphere. Standard at the moment, it should be much less. Biodiversity loss, again, this was the basis for Extinction Rebellion's protests, that we're heading for extinction because we're losing so many of our species. Then there's the addition of phosphorus to farming methods and so on. That is causing a lot of damage within the seas, with runoff to the seas and so on. And deforestation, as we know, with Brazil at the moment, the Amazon, with Bolsonaro in charge, deforestation is taking away what many people consider as the earth's lungs. So taken together, what environmentalism, these are, the core of environmentalism's concerns, and taken together, what environmentalism really is telling us, that all lives matter. Yeah, all lives matter because, we've crossed so many planetary boundaries. And the result of pushing an all lives matter narrative is that what we see is that environmental movements tend to be mainly white. Yeah, I repeat that environmental movements tend to be mainly white. That is to say that they are not attending to the concerns, the everyday concerns of many racially marginalized groups. Of course, all lives matter we can see it as a promise. It's a promise. All lives matter as a promise that is yet to be, and yet it must be. Yeah, all lives matter is a promise that is yet to be, and yet it must be. And so we keep fighting.
Brother Nick, sorry to interrupt you. There's just a call in the chat to make your slideshow presentation view. People are having trouble reading the smaller print, which is in the bottom right down there, the little kind of flip chart.
Yeah,
just to the left of that slider on the bottom right.
I tried that before. And that's better. Sorry.
That's the fellow, yeah.
Okay, so all lives matter as a going concern for environmentalists has come across, of course, last year, 25th of May, following the killing of George Floyd. You had uprisings with Black Lives Matter movement, and what Black Lives Matter really was telling us is to question the meaning of life. What does it mean? what does life mean? This is what really, when you excavate Black Lives Matter, that's exactly what it's asking. Black Lives Matter, both as a movement and as a rallying cry, it's asking, what does life mean? And more crucially, perhaps, more crucially, following the killing of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter is asking us to all search our souls and see, what does it mean to be human? Because when you see somebody kneel on somebody else's neck for 8 minutes, 46 seconds, it means they don't regard them as human, right to their death. It means, you know, they don't see them as human, or they see them as a lesser being. And so Black Lives Matter really challenges us to grapple with that question. Funny enough, of course, I've been to many Black Lives Matter protests and so on. When you go to Black Lives Matter protests, you generally tend to see quite a broad range in terms of race. And this is very interesting. So a lot of people are concerned, a lot of Black, white, and so on and so forth, people are concerned about issues of social justice. And this kind of brings people together. So justice is really a big concern for many people. And it is, of course, justice that I argue should be the entry point for any attempt to build a coalition between environmentalists and social movement activists. As Martin Luther King said, and I'm about to end here because I don't know, we're running out of time, Brother Richard. As Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Yeah, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So if we look at environmentalism through the lens of justice, then we don't focus necessarily on the future justice that environmentalism currently does, but then we look at intragenerational justice, issues of racial justice, racial injustice, economic justice, and so on and so forth. And yes, following the killing of George Floyd, May 25th last year, there was total outpouring of grief and so on, you know, and protests. You know, it was a beautiful thing. You know, I thought, wow, we're going to change something here. We're going to change something here. And then, of course, COVID came along and said, no, sorry, guys, you know, you're going to have to stay at home and, you know, socially distance and physically distance from each other. And of course, that put pay to a lot of the protests, so they couldn't happen. And looking at the environmental movement or different groups that I'm with, a lot of people seem to have an issue with focusing on racial justice issues. And that is to say that instead of acknowledging or perhaps focusing on racial justice issues, a lot of environmentalists tend to view racial justice issues through the prism of class, or they prefer to view it through the prism of class, because class is not in many respects as messy as race, because race really it forces you to look really deep at what is going on. And if we're forced to look deep at what is going on, then we have to acknowledge issues such as racial capitalism and white supremacy and so on and so forth. And these are things that generally I have found in my research and experience tends to make a lot of environmentalists quite uncomfortable. And I have thrown out the accusation that there are a lot of crocodile tears in environmentalism for social justice, because if environmentalists generally, I am generalizing here, it's probably about 30%. If a lot of environmentalists cannot stay the course of justice, stay with Black Lives Matter and so on and so forth, then the initial outpouring of disgust and grief and so on and so forth for George Floyd and others was very superficial. Bear with me. Okay, so change is coming. It's about to happen. I know it's about to happen because groups such as Extinction Rebellion and such as ourselves, you know, the Transition Network are seriously centering justice. You know, now during this pandemic, we're centering justice in everything we do, and this summit, every event throughout the summit has had questions of justice attached to it, and not just justice, because justice, of course, can be intergenerational. No, we're focusing on issues of social justice, issues of racial justice, issues of economic justice, and we need to build a network of movements in order to do that. That's the end of my presentation. I just want to play a quick video if I have time. If I don't, never mind, I can play it. We can play it a bit later if we have time. Rob, do we have time for that video?
When you say quick?
It's 2 minutes, 2 minutes literally. Yeah.
Yeah, go on. Come on.
Oh, wonderful,
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you. Now, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah. And I hope we don't have that problem with sound. Sound okay?
We can't see a video or hear any
Is the
sound.
sound okay?
Well, there isn't a video yet either.
Oh, there isn't a video? Bear with me.
When you did share screen, you need to click. Did you click share sound when you clicked share screen?
I did. Hold on. Optimize for video clip. Okay. Let's try. Can you hear it? Okay, we'll come back to it later. We'll come back to it later.
All right. Well, Nick, thank you so much for that. Wonderful. I'm going to hand over to Marvina now. Marvina, over to you.
I always say there's technical gremlins that work when you're on Zoom. Really just try and take that energy. Well, first of all, can I just take a moment to just appreciate Nick? Nick, thank you so much for standing in the gap in places that a lot of us are not privileged to be in, to make sure our voice are being advocated in spaces, to make sure systems are changing, to decolonize environmentalism. I want to say thank you, and we honor the work you've done and the research you've done. So can I just ask everyone on the chat to just send some love to Nick right now?
Oh man, Marvina, you're gonna embarrass me.
Across, because I just want to say thank you. And this is what also we need to acknowledge Black people of privilege. What Nick has done is a man standing in his privilege and creating a platform, working with Rob and working with the team to get someone like me into this space. And it's not easy. So even when we tell our Black allies, white people, to check their privilege, us as Black people, we check our privilege. And when I speak today, I need to speak from Marvina's experience. I need to speak from the role of experiences that I have based on the intersectionality of what I bring. I do not speak for a whole bunch of people. We are just part of one race, the human race. Race is a construct. We know who created it, not trying to blame anyone, but at the same time, we need to be honest about this. When we start seeing each other as one, when we see each other as part of one human race, I think this will work a little bit clearer. So if we can all agree that we're part of one human race, and that will be a good start. And by the way, we all originated from Africa. Fun facts. You can go and research that. So again, that also helps you know that we're all part of one human race. And that's something you should put in your description. Brilliant. Okay, I've done my little rant. Hi, I'm Marvina. And it's an honor to be in this space with all of you. And when I say I can't breathe, when I say that word, I can't breathe, being someone that was never asthmatic until I came into the UK, and now I'm told that I have seasonal asthma, and I have had to battle with that for the past couple of years. Coming from a country called Nigeria, you know, it's a beautiful place. Do not believe the lies. It's such a nice diversity of greenery, beautiful. I'm from the Delta region, and Ese Ogene literally means gift from God. So yes, I do feel like a gift from God, and I feel like Black people are a gift from God. Everyone is, but I'm going to celebrate Black people, African descent, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do not tell me anything about reverse racism, because racism comes with power and prejudice and the ability to stop people from being able to do what they need to do. So we'll go about that. It is going to be a challenging conversation, and I don't want anyone to feel like they can't ask questions, but before you ask a question, think. Know that it's a safe space for you to share your views, but think about the intent within your questions on the impact it might make to someone. But you are in a safe space to ask these questions. Be respectful. We both have got different lenses. Think about 6 to 9s. We might see something, but we might see it differently, but it's okay. We're learning today. So I wrote this for my daughter the other day. I can't breathe. When I say I can't breathe, I literally think about millions of Black lives, melanated skins, who are living in countries with air pollution greater than they can imagine, paying for a price that they never contributed to. When I say I can't breathe, that actually reflects on the fact that the top 3 countries that are going to be faced with climate change are melanated places. Again, that could be Yemen, Nigeria, Lagos, and Haiti. We know that those are one of the top 5s, but yet, how included are we in this conversation? When I say I can't breathe, I see the data and I see the places and I see the environmental injustice, but I don't see my Black allies anywhere trying to decolonize environmentalism. And if you know my daughter, she's 10, she is smarter than me. She goes, I don't get it then. I don't get why they can't see us and see the importance of including us in this fight. How come all the spaces we go to when you're talking about environmentalism are so white? I sat there scratching my head thinking, I don't know how to answer this. Does it mean Black people don't fight for the environment? And I was like, I know some rad people, but I just don't see them enough. Does it mean that I can be an environmentalist mummy? And I felt, hell yeah, yes you can. Does it mean that there will be space for me to do that in that space? And then I remember the young girl, Vanessa, who, was it 2 years ago, as part of the Friday campaign and youth strike, got cropped out from a whole picture, cropped out of history, literally obliterated. And I thought that could be Angel, my daughter, erased from history. That means representation matters. That being said, let me give you some history now. I like to go into my little historical things. When we think about climate change, I want you to take a second and just imagine the history of climate change, but from a Black lens. So from my mind, climate change is, you had the extraction of land, and then the colonization of people, the enslavement of people, which led to industrialization, which was fueled by capitalism, which led to climate change. See it from my lens now. Can you see that process? Extraction of land, slavery, colonization, industrialization, capitalism, climate change. Okay, brilliant, we got there. In that process, now let's connect it. It's difficult for people to see how do I include climate justice and work with social justice. It's not that hard. It is so intersectional that we need to be able to look at it that way. You need to try and decolonize your environmentalist mind, your environmentalism research. You need to look at who do I need to have in this conversation that is left out of the conversation. Am I going to be an ally? And when I say an ally, am I willing to act and make sure that there's an opportunity for all? And when I see inequality or social injustice, I create a platform for it. Do I listen? The L is to listen. Am I listening to learn, which is the other L? Am I learning from the voices of those who are marginalized, people that are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color? Are we listening to their voices of what they need to make a just world? We contribute less to what we see in the climate injustice that we are going through. Let's think about Haiti and what they went through and the fact that they're now climate refugees. And yet the countries that implicitly contributed to that do not want to accept them in. Let's talk about the rising sea levels in Grenada or Guyana. Let's talk about the Ogoni 9. Let's talk about the fact that these things are happening across in the global south, and yet we don't see the importance of intersecting our research, our materials. We don't see the ways of decolonizing it and giving power to the community. And yes, I can hear from your mindsets thinking, but if it matters to these people, they should fight for it. Yes, we should. But do you know what we're going to do? We're going to try and deal with colorism, try and deal with capitalism, try and deal with the fact that we can't walk around without being stopped and searched, try and deal with the fact that Black women are still highly discriminated, try and deal with the fact that being a Black man in 2021 is quite dangerous, try and deal with the fact that you can't need to think about whether you have gas and electricity in your house, try and deal with the fact of code switching at work to try and be appealable to your white counterparts, and everyday microaggressions that you face. And then let's put it on the priority of me fighting for the environment. every day is a fight for my life. Every day, being Black, listen, you can wear this as a costume. And I know everybody wants to be Black until it's time to be Black. We see it's so beautiful, you know, the braids are nice, dreads are nice, cultural appropriation is now a trend. It is okay to want my body, go for surgery, but still vilify these big lips that still are something you see as something exotic, but not on a Black person. Imagine how tiring it is for me to try and speak so proper, so everyone can not find me as an angry Black woman. Do you know the mental anxiety it places on me on a daily basis to make sure that I do not fall into term policing by someone else? Do you imagine the fact of me talking and saying the same thing, but my white counterpart will say it and get credit for it? Do you imagine how many times you published or written an article that has been inspired by a melanated person, but not giving credit to them and passing it on? We all have done it. We all have heard something, seen something, done something, and yet we don't even, I'm just listening to Julianne. I'm also, by the way, I'm dyslexic, dyspraxic, dyscalculus on the spectrum of autism. I literally tick all the freaking boxes and I'm here. And if you want to mix a little bit of religion, I have to decolonize my religion because Christianity was beaten into me and I now believe in that too. So yes, I'm a whole lot of mess. And I am Black and I am proud. I am African and I was born right. I came from a country where it's so rich. And yes, you think we're always talking about kings and queens, but when you learn about African history, when you learn about the way that capitalism has come, raped, pillaged, killed, destroyed who we are, then you understand this is your problem too. And yes, I say it's your problem. And what I mean is that my biggest fear is nice white people. I need to just say it. Nice white people. Hi, dear nice white people. You're not racist, but nice white people. The ones that are really nice and have a Black friend, nice white people. The ones that actually has never said anything wrong to a Black person, nice white people. The one that has a dog, who has a cat, that has a friend that is Black, nice white people. I'm speaking to you. Please, you are my biggest fear. Why? Because you're so nice that you do nothing when you see inequality. You're so nice that you're fighting for the environment, but you forget to look at me. You're so nice you do not see color, because guess what? We are just one race. How can you not see me? By not seeing me, I could see you. In fact, I see you every day in my education system. I see you. Today is Black Pound Day. Shout out to Black Pound Day and the Black Pound Initiative. Why do we have to have Black History? Be honest to you, we don't need to have Black History Month because I'm Black 365 days of the year. But thank you for giving me a month. I would use it really effectively. And that month, I'm going to try and not talk about anything to do with slavery, because slavery is not my history. Slavery is your history. It is the intersection of my history with your Eurocentric views. And that being said, people are going to be like, Marvina, you know what? You're attacking all white people. No and yes. White society benefits from Black oppression. Simple. There's no argument there. White society benefits from Black oppression. That is facts. If you say, well, Marvina, in the hierarchy of things, I come from a disadvantaged background. I live in a council estate. I made it true life by just being me. Let me welcome you to something called white privilege. Privilege is not worked for. You're just born in it. Your skin color affords you privileges that my skin color would never get. It is not me trying to be funny. It's not me trying to make you feel bad. It's just society. It's just the privilege of being a man too. Being a man, a white man, means you're going to be doing better than a white woman. Then on the scale of things, when you do a privilege walk, I will be so far behind that there's no way for me to tell you to check your privilege and you start getting women and ahhing about it. Microaggression is real. Passive aggression is real. Tone policing is real. Racial gaslighting, okay. Racial gaslighting is real. And let me explain. Marvina, it's not that bad. Why do you have to make everything about race? I didn't make it about race. I was living in my country and you tell me to go back to where I came from. Again, racial gaslighting. I can go back and I'll take back everything I brought to this country and leave you with your potatoes. What do you say about that? And I know other people might be finding this really offensive and I'm really sorry, but I'm not sorry because it's the truth. When you say, if you don't like it here, go back to where you came from. Stop taking our jobs. Okay. If you did not scramble for Africa, did not come to Nigeria, did you not colonize Nigeria, did you not then teach our Nigerian police? When I talk about the NSAS, the British government trained the Nigerian police how to start the NSAS campaign and supplied them with the guns. So those people that got killed last year, the bloods are on the British Empire. So when I say, yeah, I could go back to my country, I want everything that was done to go back. Social justice. Social justice is you being able to acknowledge the inequalities that are faced by people that don't look at you, to me. And then trying to see how do you create a platform by checking your privilege and creating an opportunity to tackle those inequalities. How does that intersect with environmentalism? It's very simple. It's the fact that you look at the people that are going to be mostly affected by climate change, find out in your room, is there anyone that looks like them? If they're not, check your privilege and see, how do I create opportunity for these people to have this conversation? What are the barriers? What are the barriers for these people to be in this room? Is it time? Am I doing on a Friday? Am I looking at neurodiversity? Am I looking at single mothers? Am I looking at the fact that these women can be on the front line? Am I looking at the fact that public resources and money is a barrier? Guys, I know in environmental movements and everything we do, we want to do it all for free. Yes, but that's a barrier for a lot of Black people. We don't have the freedom to just stand up and say, you know what, today I'm quitting my job and I am going to just focus on environmentalism because I've worked, you know, for a couple of years and I've got money stacked around and I can do this now. We don't have the luxury. Sometimes we don't. Most times we don't. So what are you providing in your organization to provide resources for Black people to be able to tackle these inequalities? How are you creating bursaries? And I mean it. So educational facilities that exist. What bursaries are you creating for Black and melanated people to be able to access, to do PhDs and research, to be the ones speaking their own truth and you not speaking for them? Do you think we cannot speak about our issues? Yes, we can. Have you tried to give us opportunities to do that? No, you haven't. That's the truth. And yes, there are one or two people that are doing it, and I really celebrate you for doing it, but you could do better. Every day, yesterday's success is yesterday's success. Success is on a rent. You pay every day. So don't sit there celebrating what you did yesterday. Celebrate what you could do tomorrow. Creating a legacy of change is so important. We get so comfortable and content with basic things that are just basic human rights. Yes, when I imagine a future, I imagine a future that I can breathe. I visualize the future as a moment where I can give land back, not in a sense that we literally give land back, but in a sense of gaining what was lost. Being able to have a truth commission to be able to speak about what damage has been created. Building Black allyships, all built around love. And I'll explain what love means to you. And I know people think, Marvina, oh gosh, you're coming up with the lovey-dovey stuff. I am all about love. And yes, sometimes I can hit you with some prayer too. Because guess what? Listen, this is bigger than me. So I need to call on Ogun, God, Jesus. I call Jesus JC, not Jeremy Corbyn JC, you know. I need to call on whoever I need to call on. And I'll probably do that before I end this session anyway, to help me identify what I need to do. So when I talk about love, I need to make it clear what I mean when I say love. The L is for listen. Again, if you notice, with allies, there was listening, because let me talk about white privilege and white savior complex. Please, we don't need none of that. Keep your white savior complex in the corner. I know there's lovely people that have gone to Africa and built, you know, schools and orphanage and done all these great things and taught English in Africa because we appreciate you. Thank you. We give you a certificate. But the truth of the matter is that what drove you to do that? Did you die to ego first? Was it about enhancing the voices of those in the marginalized communities? Or was it about giving yourself another platform for your voice to be heard? Check your privilege, check your tone, and listen to the people you're trying to build project for. Create a platform for them to do that. The O from love is to organize with an open mind. Organize with an open mind. That means you get criticized. I remember doing a project with the trans community and I failed. I failed so much and I got some backlash. I did things and I got schooled and I took it. If I pretend that I know everything right, I would not do it right. So I organize with an open mind of creating more opportunities for other people to lead. And sometimes that means you're not the one leading it. And it's okay. Don't worry, there's more opportunities for you to progress. The V is to value the variety of perspective. V, value the variety of perspective. You should make sure there are other people in the conversation that challenges your own viewpoints. You do not know everything. We all don't. And I like to diversify my table of influence. Your circle of influence, think about who is not. If I'm about to talk about disability, and even though I have got invisible disability, I think, who else do I need to include? I'm not audio challenged, I'm not visual challenged. Do I need to include them in this conversation? And do I bring them into the space and make sure that they're adequate adaptations to the space? We need to work in an anti-ableist way. Right now, on this Zoom, you should have a sign language interpreter, just because that's a normal thing we all should be doing moving forward. Also thinking about neurodiversity. If you notice when I'm talking really slow, really thinking about making sure people can follow through. And if they're not, please send me some information and I'm happy to do things. And I know that's something. B is to value the variety of perspective. E is to engage everyone in every possible way. Isn't that a nice definition of love? E, engage everyone in every possible way. How do I get my 10-year-old involved and how do I get my grandma involved? The same way. How do I get people that English is not their first language? And how do I get those who are so far removed from the conversation? And if we operate on love, if we operate on allyship, if we operate on the fact that we acknowledge our privilege, we all have various levels of privilege. So let me tell you how you turn that to power as I summarize. Privilege works like this. You see that you're in a position. Okay, let me paint a picture. This is easier. I'm at the bus stop and I know the bus is coming. It's gonna be there in 10 minutes. And I notice there's someone who has fallen down running for the bus stop. I'm looking at my bus and it's about to come. My privilege is that actually I don't need to do anything. I've seen that person fall down and now they're limping and they can't get to the bus. I could wave them down and say, come on, try and catch the bus. The bus is right here. You should be able to catch it. Or I could leave my position where I am at, walk to them, put their arm on my shoulder and help them. And we both will catch the bus. That's called power. It's that simple, guys. We do not want scraps from your table. There's enough room. Do not tell me there's a space, there's a seat on the table for you. No, I need you to create and come and get people to the table because we don't know how to navigate the landfills that is there for us to get to that space. We are walking with broken arrows stuck in our back from systematic racism, from racism we face in places that we're trying to fight institutional environmental change. We are walking on broken foots. It is not all equal. And when people talk about liberation and they say about let's co-liberate, that also sometimes comes across in the wrong way. Because when we say we want to liberate everybody at the same time, let me be real to you. You can't do that, mate. That sounds like some all life matter rubbish. And we're not about that. All life cannot matter until Black Lives Matter. And for those who think Black Lives Matter is too political, what's wrong with you? You're part of the problem. You see my accent has changed. You need to check your privilege. That being said, Marvina, I don't want to talk too much. I want to learn from you. I want to answer your questions. And I'm not academic like everybody else. We need to think intergenerational, intersectional, and international. When you create your plans, let's create it that way. And I hope, and I will be challenging a lot of people. So one of my things, when I talk in places, I hold you accountable. So now I've given you the knowledge, you need to be better. Short time frames, you just need to be better. You need to do better. And I think this is a first step, but it's about your new policies. It's about your intersectional policies. It's about, can you say Black Lives Matter without just posting the square? I don't need people posting square. I don't need tokenized activism. I need you to show me policies and procedures that you're going to do to move forward. And when you do that, I am all for you. I need you to think about Africa as a continent who is capable of sorting their problems, but they need resources. So do not come and speak to Black activists with empty hands. Do not come to speak for Black organizations with empty hands. Find your resources and find your credentials to be able to support these communities. You have the knowledge. Now let's turn it into power. You just teaching, you just speaking to people that would accept what you say is not good enough. How do you teach the young Angel Babs Zapata, my daughter, to start hosting conversations like this? That's the challenge now. How do you pass the baton and stop, unfortunately, where we are allowing older people speak about problems that would literally be affecting the younger generation, and we've already messed it up. We done mess up already. So acknowledge it, pass the baton and give it to the young generation, and make sure you're equipping them to deal with it. We will be dead by the time this thing comes. Have you passed the knowledge to support the younger generations to take the charge of what they need to do for their life? And if your answer is no, including me, then we need to do better. Reparation all day, but people don't understand that. Reparation means more. There's no price to what can be paid for my loss. And I sympathize with my Caribbean brothers and sisters. I sympathize with them. Happy Ghanaian International Day today, and 62 years of independence. Wow, that's not even a blink of an eye. So we're still recovering, guys. What can you do? I would love you all to become Black allies. I would love you all to decolonize your environmentalism. I would love you all to find creative ways and fun ways to talk about environmental issues that includes an intersectional lens. I would love you all to be human and believe that we're part of one human race. And when we do that, we've achieved it all. Thank you so much. And before I finish, I'm just going to ask a quick thing. And no one needs to, you can mute me. I do some spiritualism, and it's going to just be a quick spiritual, yeah, you could call it a prayer, but I speak power to prayers in my protest. So ancestors ain't permission to just speak to my ancestors and just ask for guidance, ask the universe, ask God and this infinite being that when we have these conversations, that it's not empty conversations. There are practical tools that we need to do to be able to deliver this. I ask that each individual on this line dies to ego, self-promotion, does not use this as a tokenized process to be able to get more funding to do things for themselves that does not improve the global south. That looks for ways to build the voices of those who are BIPOC and give them the resources and the time and expertise to do the work. I ask for ancestors that we stand on their back, that we speak truth to power in everything we do. And with that, I just say Ashe, amen. Thank you, my session done here. Any questions, feel free. Love and light to everyone in this space.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Marvina, thank you so much. What an extraordinary gift you've brought us this afternoon. Thank you so much. Wow, so Nick and I yesterday worked out some questions that I was supposed to ask both of you at this point, and I think in both of your talks you've already answered them so beautifully and so powerfully and with such great challenge. And so what we're going to ask is if you have questions for Marvina or Nick, please put them in the comments in the chat. And in the meantime, while those questions are coming in and while Rich is doing a valiant job of sorting them and clustering them together, thank you, Rich. I guess it would just be really interesting to hear that now that you've both spoken, if you have reflections on what you heard from each other. Maybe Nick, do you have any reflections on Marvina's beautiful, powerful?
And today. Do I have reflections? I feel like I'm born again. Thank you, my dear sister Marvina. Thank you so much. When I was promoting this event, I on Facebook particularly, I put in the description, you're advised, or hard hats are recommended, because I knew Marvina was going to be dropping some bombs, and so I thought people should come kind of ready for it. And my gosh, as always, every time I hear Marvina speak, I grow 10 feet taller. And thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Right. Yeah. First of all, yes, Ghana Independence Day today. In 1957, Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence from the British colonial master. So we must recognize that, and we give thanks. As Marvina said, 64 years is by the blink of an eye. It's the blink of an eye. Yes, we're living at the moment in what is generally considered the Anthropocene, but others may argue, and in fact, I subscribe to the argument that no, we're not. The Anthropocene suggests that when humans came to, or when humans evolved, let's say, what came to Earth, whatever, however you like to see it, that we started having an impact on the Earth, on the Earth because of our relation. No, the impact on the Earth only happened when industrial capitalism and then later on various versions of capitalism really evolved. So the idea then is that we live in the Capitalocene, not the Anthropocene. The Capitalocene means that capitalism has, or humans' relationships with the earth has been impactful due to capitalism. So my call, as many of you might know when you talk to me, is that I'm hoping to sort of, I'm not a reformist. I don't want to reform capitalism. I want to sort of, I want revolution, basically. Yeah, and I'll make no apology for that. Marvina talked about something really important that we often ignore, which is microaggressions. Microaggressions are the bane of many Black and brown people. And when I think about microaggressions, and then I think about, okay, this wrestling question, environmental sustainability, social justice, how can we get the two to sort of work together to understand each other better? And I think, well, if environmentalists can understand that, yes, the system that we live under is causing a hostile environment for many people in various parts of the world, that means that, amounts of greenhouse gases and so on and so forth, the extreme weather events, the increased frequency of extreme weather events is causing a hostile environment for a lot of people around the world. So a lot of people have to migrate, a lot of farmlands not able to be used. Ogoni land, where Marvina told us she was from, it's, through capitalism, through the work of Shell has been made, despoiled, people cannot have livelihoods there. So in many ways, capitalism is creating a hostile environment in that respect for many people. But then, if we extend our understanding of hostile environment just a little bit further, if we extend that understanding to know that the everyday microaggressions that people, especially Black and brown people, face, and the everyday sort of overt aggression, through police stop and search, disproportional, and also the health inequalities and so on and so forth. All these things creates a hostile environment for many Black and brown people. So we can use a hostile environment as a superordinate frame, as a master frame to try to understand better the relationship, for example, between environmental sustainability and social justice. And just one last point, Marvina talked about patriarchy. I often say that patriarchy is the longest running pandemic on earth. Yeah, patriarchy is the longest running pandemic. And of course, colonialism and racial exploitation comes a very close second in my books. Others may argue, but I like to put it that way. We're still living under patriarchy, and patriarchy is causing all these issues. And of course, the racial capitalism carries on, and racism carries on, white supremacy carries on. We were reminded of that on the 6th of January, for example, in the Capitol building in the United States. Let me stop there for now, because Brother Rob is going to turn me off and we're going to end up at 6 o'clock or something like that.
Marvin, thank you, Nick. Marvina, do you have any thoughts on what you've heard from Nick today?
First of all, I want to just say the love on the chat. The love on the chat is unreal. I love you guys. I love everything. And the personal DMs, oh my gosh, it's so important. Revolution, what Nick said about revolution is important to say. There needs to be a revolution. And if we look at society, I build projects based on love, hate, create. And people would say, what does that mean? Identify what young people in the community love doing. So I don't mean what they study, I mean what they love. So if you love music, you love art, you love fashion, whatever you love eating, yes, great, that's fine. Identify what you hate in society. And I mean hate, not dislike, hate. Because guess what? If we didn't dislike racism or slavery, believe me, we would not have the civil rights movement. You needed to hate this inequality. Like climate change, We hate climate change. So we need to figure that out. Imagine then using what you love to fix what you hate. Can you imagine the power of what you create? That's where revolution lies with. And if you create it around legacy, if you create it and you allow people to do what they love, 90% of the time when we do work, we do not love what we do. 90% of the times we come into activism, and the activism space is quite depressing. We don't talk about mental health and well-being. We don't talk about activism burnout. We don't talk about supporting each other as humans. So imagine if in activist space, we actually allow people, and I want to give a big shout out to two amazing young people that I know are in this space. Anya, who's an amazing artist, and I've been working with Anya. Anya meets Fran meets Anya. You guys will do some amazing work together. And Isaac, all the way from Hall. Isaac, love you from BLM Hall. Amazing young person doing some great things. And Marvina is probably in the space and other amazing people. But the reason I've mentioned these people, those are my Black allies. I am telling you, like I'm getting teary-eyed, and I need people to understand, when you get good Black allies, your life, you see that the world is not like that. Black allies need to do stuff. It's like, I can tell who my LGBT allies are. I could tell who my donkey allies are. I could tell who my dolphins allies are. Can't tell who my Black allies are. I don't know who you guys are. Everyone speaks politically correct. Everyone sounds the right way. Everyone knows to cover their racism underneath pretty little bows. I want something created, and I'm challenging people here who wants to work on this with me. How do we create a way to know who are our Black allies? Is that an investing in Black people kite mark? Is that something to do with training and accreditation that really keeps organization accountable if they choose to post Black Lives Matter? Is that making sure that allies have to keep up to a standard or training and proven body of work to show how they've included and encapsulated Black people or African descent people? I do not want empty words. Neither do I want empty actions. I need a track record. In science, my background, microbiology, and yeah, I worked in histology. I used to cut body parts for a living. I know that's gross, but I love my guts and blood. And yes, to make it fun, I'm also a gamer, and I do go to Comic-Cons, and guess what? I go on cosplays and I dress as Snow Black because I love Snow White. She ain't got no flavor like Snow Black. Listen.
Yes.
Listen. On top of that, when you think about Snow White's situation, the dwarfs were mining. The dwarf had to be Black. Or they must be people of color. They were mining, yeah? Why they let this white girl just chill and just sleep and just, you know, like sometimes she cook and sometimes she don't. And like, you need to look at the story around that. Have you listened to Willy Wonka, read Charlie and the Chocolate Factories? I started decolonizing books that I grew up with. I'm thinking, what is the connotation of Black experience from that? Chocolate on the Oompa Loompas were definitely Black or people of color. That orange color, listen. That's industrialism. And I did class with some students, and they wrote a letter to Charlie to Willy Wonka, and the idea was that they were doing a petition. These were year 4 students. Yeah. It was one of my friends that did it, actually. Her name is Sarah from Leeds DC. And she said in a lesson, she got the students to write a letter in year 4 to the Wonka industry to say that the way they were treating their staff was modern day slavery. That's what you as educators can be doing. That's intersectional environmentalism. That is social justice. It is fun. It is easy. It's not hard. Please don't make it hard. Don't make it complicated. Wake up in the morning and think, how do I put intersectionality as part of my breakfast this morning? Yes, that could be you diversifying your food bank. Listen, people like me don't want baked beans and potato. Get me some plantain. Yeah, you can get me some callaloo. You can get callaloo in a can. You can go and get some okra. You can go and get, tomorrow I think I'm being featured in Songs of Praise, and let's get diverse food banks running. Let's think about food poverties. Let's think about strategic ways that we can do that. These are not hard. You can do this tomorrow for your food banks. I would love to help you about how do we get a diverse food bank? When we're thinking about food closed donation, we talk about refugees, but you don't talk about the reasons that they became refugees. Let's talk about climate refugees. Let's be honest about it. Let's talk about how we're supporting the what's happening in Asia, the fine. And people think, oh, because I'm Black Lives Matter, I don't care about everybody else. You're stupid. I care. An oppressed group knows what oppression looks like, because it's not an oppression Olympics. We're not here to see who got oppressed the most, mate. It is crap for all of us one way or another, but I'll stop questions coming in because I see some cool questions. Who's organizing the questions? Rich has got their fingers up.
Rich has a question.
Yeah. Just a quick moment. Andrew shared on the chat, I hope it's okay to say out loud, Andrew, that he is also neurodiverse and struggling with understanding intersectionality. So you use that term a lot. I wonder if you could just do a little clarity on that word for us, and then I'll hand back to Rob for managing the questions.
Okay. Give me a second. I've got a good example for this. Just 2 seconds. I'm getting up. I'm coming back. 2 seconds.
That's okay. I'm ready to start singing, people, if you're ready.
Let's cook it up.
Sister Marvina,
Intersectionality.
you just saved them from me singing.
Definitely. So intersectionality is, look at these onions, right? There are multiple layers that make this onions. This could be your outside layer, what people see. So people see me as Marvina, a Black woman. In fact, some people might see me and say, I'm a woman. You take that part, if you take one layer off, then I'm a Black person. You take another layer off, I'm a mother. You take another layer off, I am dyslexic. Take another layer off. Sorry, I'm so unfit. I just ran and I realized that. Gosh, I'm 35 going 36 and I'm aging gracefully. I love the fact that I'm getting older. For those who are not happy about getting old, listen, it's called wisdom. And if you're not wise, just claim that you're wiser. It doesn't matter. And you take another layer off. You take another layer off, I suffer from depression and anxiety. You take another layer off, I'm also a single mother going through a divorce. You take another layer off. So you cannot remove, when you talk about intersectionality, my identity has a multiple layer of who I am. And when you just see me as this person here, you fail me. When you don't address all the barriers, like when you look at the ring, I don't know if you can see it. If you look at onions, the different rings, just see it as a circle of influence. The different rings, if you keep, it's like me asking you, so who are you, Rob? And then Rob goes, I'm a man. And I'm like, forget about that part. Who are you, Rob? What else would you say, Rob?
I'm a straight man.
Forget about being straight. Who are you, Rob?
I'm a father. I'm a husband.
Oh, forget about those two.
Oh,
Who
forget
are you,
about
Rob?
them as well. Okay.
So that's what else would you say?
I'm an artist. I'm a gardener. Yeah, I don't know. Not quite.
Do you see how the fact that I kept dismissing who you were?
Yeah.
You got to that point where you're just like, so who am I?
Like, very quickly.
Can you imagine? So intersectionality is saying, when I see Rob now, I see Rob as a father, a husband. I see Rob as an artist, a gardener. I see Rob in all Rob's amazing qualities, spoken and unspoken. I would listen to Rob and learn from Rob's experience. I would then observe with an opening mind to be able to work effectively with Rob. I would then make sure I have a variety of perspective in how I work with Rob. And then the way I engage with him will be based around who he is. That's intersectional. That I then see Rob as a whole individual with various parts. So that means I need to speak to Rob. I'll be like, okay, Rob, it's 9 o'clock for a meeting. Have you put the kids to bed? Like, I'm not going to assume that your wife is going to put the kids to bed. Maybe it's not advisable for me to have, if Rob has told me Friday night is date night, I'm not going to then be booking social meetings on a Friday night. if Rob has told me someone's passed away, I'm going to treat Rob with that respect of giving him the mental well-being space and being supportive to let him do what he needs to do. I'm not going to send him messages about emails. Oh, Rob, I know someone's passed away, but guess what? Yeah, I really need that profile done really quickly. And so intersectionality, if it was that, was it Richard or someone else that highlighted that? I want them to know intersectionality from around neurodiversity is that you are you on top of all the other oppression of the barriers you have. And we cannot remove those identities. And people, what fails us in this movement is that we don't acknowledge it and we don't create systems to support it. So just like I just highlighted, even though I'm not audibly impaired and I'm not visually impaired, I'm thinking, how are people who fall in those categories, who are activists, who need to be hearing all this, how are they getting this information? Are we thinking about them? So, and imagine if that person was neuro and visually impaired and Black, do you know the multiple layers of oppression they're facing? And yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
Thank you. I think that's possibly the best definition of intersection I've heard. Thank you so much. Yeah, and yeah, I love Tony K. Bambara said we must make just and liberated futures irresistible. And I feel like we've just spent some time with an absolute, whatever the gender version of master is, a great prophet teacher of that. Thank you so much. And we have questions that are pouring in, and I'm going to choose one of them here, which comes from Joe Duggan. And Roxy asked a very similar question as well. He said, I totally hear the need to get people to the table, and I completely agree. I've tried a bit, not enough on this, into the centers of power, of boards, of groups. Can you give some examples of good practice of this? Where have you seen best practice in terms of organizations really making an effort, really doing good work on this? Maybe we start with Marvina and then we'll go to Nick.
Ooh. Okay, I'm going to talk about, I live in Leeds. I'm originally from London. And right now, that's a great question. That's a great question. So I'm going to give you an example of what we're doing in Leeds. We just set up something called Angel House. Angel House is a coalition of Youth Strike for Climate Change, Angel of Youth, which is the youth organization I run, and My Queer Culture and Black Lives Matter. So these are unlikely alliances who have realized the importance of creating a coalition and working in a consortium to support young people. So no longer are we trying to do stuff where we're separating how young people work, because we realize the adults have been doing that so well. It's now important for the younger generation to not know anything different. And in the process of creating that foundation, we're learning, we've given young people the ability to run workshops to teach us about anti-ableism. So I've got an amazing young person called Daisy, who's just done a 3-week session to teach me about anti-ableism and how I can diversify the way we work in future. And we paid her. It didn't matter that she was 17. It didn't matter. It didn't matter whether she had a degree in it. She had a live life experience. So we all learned about it. Co-creation. Co-creation is the most beautiful. Co-creation in activism is staying in a place and not thinking you're above anyone, but learning in a symbiotic way. So I see myself as a little sponge where I suck things in, but also in an osmotic relationship, I also give things out, but not in an authoritative way. So, but another thing is that has really worked in that perspective. Another way we're working is at the moment, I am looking at building a Black allyship where we're decolonizing their curriculum. And that is simple things like working with colleges and saying, can we diversify your reading list? Let's see, how do you make sure, instead of, by the way, I love Beowulf so much. I read Beowulf in Nigeria. When I know people will be like, Beowulf, what's that got to do with this? I realized I learned so much while I was in Nigeria about Britain, that Britain doesn't know that much about Nigeria. So how do we diversify those educational? So that's the whole reason about Beowulf. So like, I actually thought I was going to meet dragons when I got here when I was young. And The only reason my parents got me to this country, they lied to me and told me we're going to Disney, and we ended up in City Airport. I will never forgive my mother, because I wondered, why are we here? Are we poor now? Have we lost all our riches in Nigeria?
Oh man.
I'm still traumatized. It's like 20 years later, and I still feel like it was meant to be a holiday that we never went back, and I still don't understand. But what that means is like finding ways to incorporate. So I work with African Horizon, and we work with someone called Rob, and we did the big banner drop. So I'm going to explain why I brought that. We did a big banner drop on the Big Ben, you know, highlighting the Truth Commission and everything. And we did that, and we learned that we didn't consult with the wider African community. And yes, we got some trouble for doing it, don't get me wrong. But what we've done from that, we've learned, we've built bridges as allies, or because I also need to acknowledge my privilege that I'm an African living in the diaspora, living with privilege in certain places that those in the continent. So I have a responsibility of vocalizing the truths based on who's done the work on ground before me. So there's a lot of learning. So I don't know if that explains the question well about how you can do things practically. For cooking classes, we run a cooking class, and we're making sure with the food bank, we're trying to do some diverse cooking lessons. So if you come to some of our soup kitchens, sometimes you might have jollof rice, Nigerian jollof rice, not the Ghanaian one. We don't know anything about that.
Hey.
Those kind of little things, really. So I'll leave and I would say to Nick, please do not bring the Ghanaian jollof rice fight, because you would lose. But it's all right, and not everybody can be great at everything. And while I'm passing to Nick, another good one is consent. I need to explain to activists, mostly environmental activists, consent is very important. It is dangerous to protest while Black. Listen, it is dangerous to protest while Black. When you guys protest, you guys go hard. Like, it's like you guys like getting arrested sometimes, and that's fine. But if you see a Black person around you, and you might have this strategy of, you know, like for the cause, think about what that impact will be for the Black person next to you. The police aren't that friendly to us. We can literally lose our lives. So if you're ever organizing a protest and you're inviting Black people, can I ask you to just be a shield and protect Black people? Like, do not do things that would endanger that Black life. That's what Black Lives Matter means to me. So I remember coming to XR closing ceremony, and a good example was I had a group of people that did create a barrier against me and the police, because the police were pestering me all through that protest. So it's simple things like that anyway in a custodian, but I can share some tips later on, and I've got some documents that I can pass if people need. I'm happy to work with people, but I'm here because Nick invited me. Make sure you do have a budget when you talk to me, but it's good.
Thank you.
Oh my dear sister.
Oh, any thoughts on that question?
Oh man! Oh wow! I love you. I love you, Marvina. Seriously, man, I got so much love for you. It's not funny. All right. I'll be very brief because I've had a nudge from the event manager that we need to sort of wrap things up. And I love this free flowing feel. You know, when we're planning the events, we're like, oh, should we do breakout rooms? So I said, no, let's get everybody in there. Let's have a conversation as much as possible. This is where we really get to learn a lot. You know, none of us are complete. We have to learn from each other, and this is the whole point. Oh man. Okay, so Marvina talked about Africans Rising and the ACTR as well, and my highlight of last year was that banner drop. You know, I'm not really, yes, I am a very sensitive person, etc., but I don't cry a lot. When I saw that banner drop on Parliament Square, I go, wow, this is what allyship looks like. This is what putting yourself on the front line looks like. This is what knowing that my injustice is connected to yours looks like. This is what knowing that my liberation, or you cannot be liberated unless I am liberated, looks like. This is what love, LOVE, looks like. And when I saw that banner drop, I was just blown away. You know, it's like, I'm done. My work is done. You know, if I died that day, I would have died a very happy man. You know, it's amazing, really the most amazing feeling of that day. And my gosh, I hold those guys in such high esteem. In terms, I'll be very brief, Rob. I know we're pushed. Okay, so Africans Rising ACTR I've talked about. I have some love for XR. I have some love for XR, Extinction Rebellion, because XR has engaged, you know, since personally I got involved in April 2019. And XR has faced a barrage of criticisms, etc., you know, in terms of race and class issues. And what XR has done, in my opinion, in my analysis, is to have a critical self-inventory. So, you know, the group goes back and looks at itself, looks at its action, and try to improve things. So whereas, you know, instead of maybe stopping a GLR train, you know, that will stop, you know, people with precarious jobs going to work and so on and so forth. XR, for example, now is targeting institutions with historic and contemporary ties to colonialism and racism, and, you know, highlighting those, you know, the works of those institutions, and that's very important. So I can give many other examples as well in terms of XR. And final little example is the Transition Network. You know, I have been studying the Transition Network since 2014, and I have put some criticism forward of the network since 2014, and I have suggested that we have not been proactive enough in dealing with issues of social justice, and particularly racial justice. And my first encounter with Rob on social media, probably in 2015 or so, was a challenge. You know, I put that forward, and Rob said, no, but we are trying to do enough. I said, no, you're not doing enough. You can do better, my brother. You can do better. And, you know, therein started our bromance, so to speak. And here we are today, and we're carrying on. I shall end there because I know event management team are just breaking it, so to speak.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, this has been absolutely extraordinary. I feel like Marvina's definition of love is something that can away and very much internalized in thing that happens. And one of the things that we are doing today, and we are doing at different stages throughout the What Next Summit, is bringing in what we call keynote listeners. So we're all used to the idea of keynote speakers who come along and share their wisdom and then go again. And what we like to do and have done at different transition events is bring keynote listeners who listen and who then share some reflections. And we have two keynote listeners here today. We have Marcus Ryder and we have Hannah Ryder, who have been listening to this whole delicious conversation and who are now going to share some reflections for about 5 minutes each. Would be really lovely to hear. Maybe Hannah, can we start with you? What would be your reflections as a keynote listener on what you've heard here today?
All right, everyone, thank you so much. And it's great to be part of this discussion. Really wonderful to have the invitation to be a keynote listener. I think it might be the first time that I've been invited to be a keynote listener, but I really like the concept. So thank you so much. And I hope I'll be using it in future as well with organizing. Just to say hello to everyone and give you a bit of context about why I'm being part of this discussion. So Nick reached out and I work in international development. I've worked for the UN and run a international development consultancy, which we also advise African governments and a whole range of other people on environmental issues and also international development. One of the key issues, I worked on the Stern review of the economics of climate change back in 2006. Some of you might know about that. But what it did was it was seen as quite sort of transformational politically at that point, because it turned the concept of climate change into not just a scientific issue, but tried to bring out the economics of it. Tried to say, look, well, the acting on climate change is going to be much more expensive than not acting on climate change is going to be much more expensive than doing something now. That was the kind of overall headline. and it was you know, a real honor to be working on that, and it's really shaped in a way what I've been listening to today, because and my responses to what I've been listening today from Nick and Marvina, because you know what they've put forward is also something which, you know, which I try to do in my work, which is try to think about what is actually a decolonized perspective on these issues. What does it actually mean? And sometimes we get the opportunity to do that, and sometimes we don't. And I think what's been really great is both Nick and Marvina really challenging us to think about that, and to think about what that. And while Stern, you know, Stern review, and I'm seeing some people saying, yes, it was really a watershed moment. That's great. You know, I'm glad to know that, because I was also, you know, I was part of it. But I also, there was part of it, and reflecting on it now, was it possibly a decolonized perspective? Could it probably actually could have gone way further? And I think about that in terms of, and I think one of the things that struck me was, especially after the review was published, was that there was a big discussion about why the review had something called a discount rate, and it was very it was looking at intergenerational equity. So there's lots of economists coming in, and it was, you know, a very technical discussion. But one of the things, as a Black person on that team, and there weren't not many Black people, should we say, on that team, and as an African on that team, was what spoke to me most was actually the intragenerational aspects of it. So the fact that constantly we are discounting the needs of poorer people, and in particular, poorer people who tend to be outside. Stern Review was written in the UK, who tend to be outside of the UK, who tend to be in poorer countries, and are not. And what, you know, Marvina got it absolutely right. Those people are not helpless, but they do lack resources, and especially financial resources. So, you know, there's a question around how does that, in fact, in terms of the way that the Stern Review was then interpreted by the mainstream, you know, kind of in terms of mainstream economists, a whole range of others, policymakers, you know, and I was with those people. The way that it was interpreted was not really taking that issue really into account. I mean, yes, there were some big changes in terms of, you know, climate finance internationally, moving on. There was, you know, some shifts in terms of domestic policy. And again, people I think in the chat are talking about that. But there is still a great deal of work to do to say, what does decolonized environmentalism look like? And I don't think Stern Review certainly gets us in some direction, but we've even got, you know, again, in the chat, there was a discussion about, we were talking about the donut economics. What does a decolonized view of donut economics actually look like? Is it exactly what it is? Does it stay the same, or does it not? And I don't think we've actually had those conversations in terms of thinking through the social justice implications of it, both in terms of foreign policy and also domestic policy. So for me, that has, you know, this discussion has really put that into sharp focus. And I think there's actually quite a lot of work to do. If we're thinking about internationally, there's a big debate going on right now because of the G7. I have had this kind of, there's a big debate with G7 and G20 talking about whether there should be a ban on fossil fuel financing. And that means not just ban on coal financing from the multilateral development banks, but it also means potentially a ban on gas and oil financing. So that is there needs to be a discussion of whether that actually is whether that is in line with decolonized environmentalism. I've had a lot of conversations with a number of my counterparts on these sorts of policy issues and kind of foreign policy issues, lots of think tanks and so on. And I don't think we've got to the bottom of it at all. We're really not there. There are people who really work very hard and have very strong views and analysis on climate reparations and how that needs to come in. Are we really listening to those views? Are we really taking those into account? And then if we come back to domestically and domestic policy, what does it mean for the UK in terms of renewables policy, in terms of what does a decolonized environmentalism look like, addressed in terms of UK policy? So that was what I kind of got from this discussion. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Hannah, so much for joining us, and appreciating that you're in Malaysia and it's very late there now. So we appreciate you staying up to do this for us. Marcus, could we move to you? Any reflections?
Yeah. So what I got from the debate is that it was very far-reaching. So it spread across so many topics that Nick and Marvina were talking about, and ranged across topics that you wouldn't normally get in almost any other Zoom that I've been in. I've been in loads and loads of Zoom conferences ever since the pandemic for the last, year. And this one ranged broadly. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that I think that you have to take a holistic, all life, all encompassing approach if you're talking about Black Lives Matter and if you're talking about environmentalism. And what's interesting is when you look at those two issues, they inherently bring out the contradictions that we have, not just in trying to marry those two issues, but lots and lots of issues in our lives. And so, for example, two which immediately sprung to mind is, even though we were talking about great, it's Ghanaian independence, wonderful, but what is the concept of the nation state? And if we're really talking about environmentalism, how does the nation state actually play into that? And what do we actually do? And how should we actually celebrate or try and deconstruct the nation state? At the same time, the other thing which I found incredibly interesting was, I think somebody asked about examples of best practice. And I think the framing with regards to best practice is invariably, let's look at environmental, or let's look at the institutions that work, and then see how could social justice or how could Black equality and participation fit better into those. And for me, I came to environmentalism without having the term environmentalism when I was a teenager, because I was surrounded by Rastas, right? And Rastafarianism is, and the idea, and fundamental to that is the breaking down of the nation state, of the idea that white supremacy, imperialism is Babylon, and we need to break that down. Now, they spoke about it within a religious context. And what's interesting for me is that when we invariably talk about best practice, it's about keeping the frameworks and the terms of reference that we are comfortable with. And often we are uncomfortable with Rasta or other forms that could actually be addressing these issues, whether that's in Asia or whether that's in Africa or whether that's in the Caribbean, right? And I think until we actually recognize that there are other bodies, whether they be religious, whether they be other social movements, that would not label themselves as environmentalist, right? Until we actually see how do we marry these different things that often we have an uncomfortability about, right? Then I don't think we're ever going to come to an easy marriage and be able to properly address some of the contradictions that Marvina and Nick talked about, right? And it's not easy because sometimes we don't want to talk about these things. Sometimes some of these things are, some of these organizations we might actually be seen as regressive in some aspects, but nothing comes perfectly formed. Just as if we are going to engage with Extinction Rebellion as Black people, we have to recognize, and we do recognize, right, that the environmental movement in Europe and across the world invariably does not come perfectly formed and is not perfect for Black people, right? And similarly, I think that it is important for, when we talk about allyship, for white people to recognize that what they're allying with, right, might not be a comfortable fit for them. But unless you are entering spaces and ally, if you are entering spaces that you feel completely comfortable with, that's not allyship, right? That's actually just pick and choosing, you know, what you're comfortable with. And so what we need to do, right, is that if we're not feeling a level of uncomfortability, right, then we are not being true allies. And it's important that we enter spaces and we ally and we champion things which we might not feel 100% comfortable with.
Marcus, thank you so much. Marvina, are you applauding, or have you put your hand up? I'm never very good at it.
No, I'm applauding and also just wanting to say this, and I want this to be publicly noted. Green spaces are racist. We need to talk about that. Green spaces are not inclusive. Yes, there's some people trying. I don't want to paint a picture that like it's okay. At the moment, green spaces, when Black people go in, are not inclusive. They're not welcoming. They do exclude. They make people that look like me get pushed out. People that are melanated are not listened to. In fact, it feels like green spaces are stuck in like back in the day, like in a different kind of world where white voices seems like the right voices, and it's not okay. So the one thing I want, even though I've said all these lovely things and I'm doing kumbaya, I'm still here for Black lives, and we all need to fix up. And I'm politely letting people listening to this know that the next year I am going to call people out, because it's dangerous to have any space that is not going to be inclusive of those who are marginalized and disadvantaged. And when I say call out, it's in the nicest way of saying I will call you out. So I'm just giving you a heads up in a nice, lovely way, peace and love, to see how you're going to do some stuff around fixing that. I also wanted to highlight there's a good example of, I am doing some work with XR. We are doing some Black Allies training. I have done. They are looking at work that they're doing to also make their space more welcoming, inclusive, and better on a strategic level. Other people can take suits. I'm happy, not all Black people, it's not our job or our labor to teach you. You need to educate yourself. And please try and be the best ally you can be. I really can't stress this. I've always been an ally I've been a white ally. That means I've been an ally to white people all my life. I just need people now to be allies to me, to my community, to my needs. I don't wait for white people to tell me what to do for them. I figure out what the needs is and I try and I study. Go and read some books, start a reading club, create a circle. Leeds got something called the Black Allies Network. We can replicate that anywhere we need to. I can pass the model for you guys to use. This is where white people sit with each other and figure out how not to be racist. It's a beautiful thing. They also share resources. They look at ways to invest in the Black pound. They look at ways to buy Black. And I mean buy Black. Find a Black restaurant, find Black shops. Who are your Black contractors? Who are your Black artists? Can you start looking at how you spend money in a Black way? The Black pound does not circulate. You need to decolonize the economy. So there are loads of things you need to do, but all of us have our expertise that we can use and do something. I want to say thank you to the keynote speakers, but I just wanted to come on that part that I hope I'm not coming across as kumbaya in this thing. Green spaces, please stop being racist, and please, no, not please, just stop being racist. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You can't think environment without including us.
Marvina, thank you so much. It's my most fervent, heartfelt hope that today represents, certainly in the transition movement, when its story is told, that this event represents a really profound shift in what we do and how we all do it. And you talked about the need to do the work and do the reading, and one next week's summit is about what if, is about imagination and possibility. And certainly for me, I find all of the best, most inspiring people that I read who do so much thinking about imagination and possibility, and the movements like prison abolition movement as the most phenomenal what if question movement, just wonderful. And I get so much inspiration from Mariame Kaba and Adrienne Marie Brown and people who for me have way out there in terms of inspiring me and the work that I do. I love when she said something like, we're living in the ancestral imagination of others with their longing for safety and abundance, a longing that didn't include us or included us as an enemy, fright, other. We need to be wrapping up very soon, and before we do that, and before we all surround our speakers and keynote listeners with love and thanks, I want to just hand over to Fanny, who has been sketching away and trying to capture this phenomenal conversation graphically. Fanny, over to you.
Hello, thanks a lot for creating this space. I have been listening, and of course it's not finished because it has been so rich and very broad, and oh well, I'm not gonna talk more. Just a big thank you and a lot of energy to do the work.
Thanks for the hair, Fanny.
I'm just in awe.
Right? Amazing.
Oh, Anya, I definitely need you to meet Anya. This is definitely. Wow.
Oh, the onion. Yes, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Exactly what I'm talking about.
And the award for the best onion goes to?
Wonderful. Is it locally grown?
Listen, don't start with me. Remember, disadvantaged community have no access to organic shops. Like
I hear you, my sister. Beautiful.
Fanny, thank you so much for that. So this will be available on all of our various online places and social media and stuff. So do share that. And Fanny, thank you so much. So we need to bring things to a close. So one of the things we like to do just before we wrap up is, if there were 3 words that came to your mind of what you're taking away from this session, how you feel as a result of it, could you please pop them into the chat now? Let's just have a little waterfall of 3 words that for you capture what your experience has been to be in this session today. Onion, that's 1 word, Marcus. You're allowed 3. Fierce, loving, relieving. Thank you, Tony. 3 onions. Richly nourished. Tears, onion or joy?
Not doing enough. I like that, Joe.
Oh, Jodie.
Full of questions.
Yeah.
Privileged, think love. Uncomfortable, privileged, onion. Inspired, thoughtful, uncomfortable. Allyship, allyship, allyship. Beautiful. Thank you, Hilary.
No one's going to look at onions the same again, right?
Oh, can I do some shameless promotion?
Promote away, Marvina.
So on the 21st of March is International Day of Elimination of Racism, which is the UN's day. And this year, for the first time, Black Lives Matter groups across the UK are coming together, and we're reclaiming the day. We're reclaiming it and putting Africa the International Decade of African People as part of our priority, and also youths fighting against racism. We decided to find an intersectionality of bringing these two together, and we would love you to be involved in it. I will put the link, get your tickets, get involved, and support in any way you can. And find me on Majestic Marvina if you want to volunteer and figure out ways to create like really good content around this that links to climate justice. I really like the climate justice angle. We are reclaiming the day, and it's very important. You will understand why we need to make sure we put the origins of that day back into the African context in any way we can. So 21st of March, where are you going to be? You're going to be with me. I'm hosting. So see you then.
Perfect.